Hello there and welcome. My name is Doris Benter. I'm from Library Arts, and today I'd like to walk you through a drawing of a beautiful lighthouse. This lighthouse is inspired by the artist Edward Hopper. We're going to take a look at his gorgeous shadow and light on the lighthouse. We're going to do a pencil drawing of the lighthouse. We can use markers, colors, or crayons to color in your lighthouse. You're just going to need an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper and a pencil to get started. Why don't we get started now? Okay, let's get started with drawing our lighthouse inspired by Edward Hopper. We're going to start with the ground on the bottom of our paper, and again, you only need an 8.5 by 11 copy sheet. Nothing fancy for this. Then after we get our ground laid in, we're going to work our way up to the lighthouse, working from the bottom of the tower all the way up, and then adding the base after that. So let's get started. Near the bottom of my paper right here, I'm going to start by drawing a little hill, just a soft little curved line. Now, connected to that, I'm going to draw another hill like that. So you end up having two little combined hills. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to come in the side and sort of suggest a little element of water. So this portion right here is going to feel like water. And then we're going to come in with a little bit of a curve, and we're going to go over to the other side like that. So we're just building land masses with a little water portion in here. Finally, we're going to come over here with a straight line, diagonal, little bit of a hill, and then we're going to go to a bigger hill over here. Okay. In fact, I think I'm going to make this one a little bit longer because I think I need that longer for my lighthouse. So we're going to go over here, then we're going to drop down. And that's going to give us what we need for our picture. So now let's move on to actually building the tower for our lighthouse. So our tower is going to be right in between this area where the dip is, okay? So we're going to start by working from the top all the way down to the bottom. So let's go to here, go up, so that we're looking near the top of the page. And we're going to start with a little circle, which will be the tip of the lighthouse top. We're going to put a little dome on that circle, just a small upside down U shape. And because it's a three-dimensional form, we're going to want to put a little curve like that. Now we're going to do the light window part of the drawing. So we're going to come down with two straight lines like this. We're going to add another curve, but the curve's going to go a little wider than that window. We're going to put three lines, vertical, 1, 2, 3. And we're going to duplicate, make another curve going right through the windows. By making these curves, we're making our cylinder feel more three-dimensional. We don't want our tower, our lighthouse, to feel like it is flat. The next thing we're going to do, this is actually going to be a railing, so we're going to put two small diagonals in. We're going to go out with another curve. Each curve is a little bit like a frown shape, isn't it? And now we're going to add some railings here, just like that. And we're going to make this a little bit of a base for that railing and repeat the curve again. Okay, that's basically the top of your lighthouse. Now we're going to work our way down the tower. So now we're going to come with two short, slightly diagonal, almost just vertical, but with a slight diagonal here and here. And we're going to basically repeat that process of making a railing. And I'm just going to bring that tower down here and here. so that the railing feels like there. That looks a little more finished. Okay. We're also going to just bring 2 little diagonals to show that that goes around the lighthouse. Now we're going to do another soft frown. Again, it's going to be a railing, so we're going to do 2 diagonal lines. We're going to do a just slightly wider than this one, not much, frown, soft curve, again with the diagonals, to create the same kind of base we did here. So we're going to go over, and now we're going to come up here and again make a railing. And if you want to do just a little rim there, that's okay. And then 1 line going across. So there is sort of the this is the light on top. This is the midsection of the upper portion of the lighthouse. Now we're going to work our way down, 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 down to the bottom of the lighthouse. Notice how I'm using my pencil very, very lightly. And the reason why I'm doing that is because if I make a mistake, it's much easier to erase if I've gone very light. Now, there are some windows in the lighthouse, these little arched windows in the Lighthouse by Hopper. So we're going to put 1 here. We're going to put another one here. And down at the bottom, we're going to add a 3rd one. But let's go ahead and start to build that base. I'm going to bring it down just a little bit lower. Okay, so right here from the hill, we're going to come out with a diagonal going upwards. We're going to echo that diagonal just like that. Okay, we're going to come down with a straight line, nice vertical line, and then we're going to go back with a soft diagonal line out here and echo that right there. That's basically creating the base of our lighthouse. We're going to come down with a vertical line here. So you see this kind of like a house on the very bottom that is showing us what's happening. So again, let me go over that again. Diagonal, diagonal, diagonal down, diagonal down, vertical line here in the corner. Now we're going to use that edge right here of this to form another little house coming out. So we're going to put a little diagonal there and a diagonal leaning in towards the corner. It's going to be a little house. We're going to put a vertical line here and 2 diagonals making the little roof line. And then we're going to add a little door entrance to the lighthouse down there. Now there, you basically have your lighthouse with the base and the land. Now coming in from the side, we're just gonna put a couple little clouds sort of reaching in with a little curve going off the paper. So it's just a little bit of an interesting shape pointing towards the lighthouse and going off the paper. So that is your lighthouse drawing. What I would do at this point is I would go over the drawing, maybe not the clouds, that's really up to you, but I would go over the land, the lighthouse with a black marker, and then we can get into shading the lighthouse in the next video, and then finally working on the background. Okay, let's see you take care of that step, and I'll meet you up for the next step in a moment. On the lighthouse today. Now, if we look at our original right here, this is why I chose this picture. The beautiful shadow on the side of the lighthouse is something that we're going to try to capture today in this drawing that you started earlier. Now, let's think about the colors we might need to capture that shadow. Do you see the blues in there? I see a lot of blue. So not only purple, and I know you want to say purple, there's some beautiful blues in there. There's definitely some purples in there. And you can see I'm planning on using colored pencil. You could use marker if you had to. You just probably wouldn't use quite the range of color pencils that I have here. Here's another blue. So that to me seems like a lot of good colors that I might use for the shadow. I might even use a little bit of gray and a tiny bit of black. So a lot of the cool tones are what I'm going to focus on using for the shadow in the lighthouse. Now, the other thing that we're going to need are some colors for the top of the lighthouse. Now, we're going to see a lot of yellow. So we're going the opposite end of the spectrum with beautiful warm tones. I would even put some reddish brown tones in there, oranges in there, and maybe even a dark brown. So I'm going to put those over there. And over here, you're going to say, well, Ms. Benter, that's just plain white. Well, one thing that I'd like to show you is that when you think about things being just plain white, if you put a sheet of paper right near this, you'll see, whew, wait a minute, that looks more yellowish creamy to me than pure white. So that's why when I add color to the other side of the lighthouse, I'm going to be thinking of very pale peachy colors, maybe a hint of pink, and of course some white. Very, very pale. I'm not going to put a lot of the heavy colors here, very pale colors, but I might use a combination of those. That basically is the range of colors I want to use for the lighthouse. So I'm going to put this aside and bring this over here now. I want to keep that shadow of the lighthouse nearby so I can see it. So I'm going to put it right here because if you have a photograph nearby, it's going to help you see the color better. So let's get started on this bright light side and then slowly transition over to the pinker side. So as I told you before, I'm going to start not with white, but I'm actually going to start with a very, very pale peach. It's so pale, you may even have a hard time seeing it as I'm applying it. And notice how lightly I'm putting very little pressure. I'm not pressing hard on that pencil because I really, really want the color to build up in layers. Because if you press really hard with a color pencil, the color is going to come out very firm. And then guess what? It's going to be hard to layer any other colors on top. I'm going to put a very, very pale pink over it because I just want, again, a hint of color. I don't want a lot, but that's going to also help me transition into those blue purples on the other side. So I'm going to put right here, you might see there's a bit of a line where that blue transitions over to that creamy color. So I'm going to actually go a little heavier there, just a bit, to tell me that's where the blue is going to start coming in. So I'm going to switch over to those pale blues, and I told you I was going to build up slowly. It's a very dark shadow, but we're going to build up slowly. So I'm going to put some pale, pale blue here, just to start, just a starter color. Very light pressure. Now there's that beautiful pinkish purple in there. I'm going to add that somewhat on top. Just layering. It's all about layering and make it go into that pink a little bit to make it a little bit darker. And this is how I want you to think about working today, is the idea of layering color slowly. This is why we're only going to do the lighthouse today. I'm not going to focus on any other part because I think it's just too much. Now, how about some of this blue here? I have a pretty blue that's going to start to make it look more like a purpley shadow that I'm after. So you see how the color is building up and beginning to create a darker tone on that side of the lighthouse? That is my goal, is to build it up slowly, layer by layer, until I get a really beautiful purpley tone. Now up here along the edge, it does actually get a little darker. So I'm going to put it in a little heavier, pressing down a little more firmly on my pencil. And then I'm going to bring this really lovely purple color pencil in finally, and now I'm going to start building up even more. Getting a little heavier with the pressure on my pencil so I can really enhance that shadow as it moves across the side of the lighthouse. Just like that, maybe getting a little more intense here, putting a little bit more of that pretty blue in there to soften the pink. Okay, and maybe a little more dark purple. You see how I haven't even left this side of the lighthouse because I'm working so hard at getting that really dark color in there. And maybe even a tiny bit of gray, just again to add some depth to the shadow. I don't really want to add a lot of black unless I see something really dark. Now, over here on the side, I actually have one I did earlier, and I want to show you how, again, I built it up. And if you notice right here, that shadow, I went back and I built that up with purples. It's not going to be the exact colors you see here, and that's okay. I'm going for a shadowy purple without doing the absolute purple. So I'm going to come over here and just sort of indicate there's a little bit of an arch here, and it comes up to a point. So I'm just going to put it in there lightly with the gray. And then I'm going to come back in, and again with that beautiful purple, pinky purple I should say, build that up and take some darker purple and slowly build it up. That is the goal. Now how about those windows? They definitely have a purple tone to them that picks up the shadow on this side. They definitely have a little hint of that pink in there. And of course, as I told you, this is a very white side. So even though I'm putting down white color pencil and you can't see it that great, it's there, and it's going to help illuminate that side of the lighthouse. So I could even go back and say, I could go a little heavier again here, maybe with the color pencil. You decide how heavy you need to go. You can always come back and build it up, but it's much harder to take it away. That's why we build up slowly. Now, under here, you'll notice it's very dark, but I'm not just going to grab the black and go there. I'm going to actually shade it in lightly with some gray, leaving a little of the white edge showing. I think I might go in there with some of that dark bluish purple. So again, gradually building up to a darker color. And then finally, really go in with some black on top of that purple. So it still has that purpley shadow, but the black really emphasizes it. Now let's move above. We're going to do the same thing we did before. We're going to start very pale, maybe some light blue. And again, it just does not go over all the way. It starts tilting with a little arch right here. And the same way I built it up before, I would encourage you to slowly add the color. Slowly, very little pressure. And build up that color till you get what you're after, which is a really beautiful, lovely purple shadow. So once again, I'm just going to show you, if we look right here, you see what I'm doing? I'm following that edge over, the way it kind of arches over here and then arches over here. Now we're ready to go up to the top. So let's do that next. I would probably fill that in with the same pale pink. And obviously this too, start with some purple. Go over it with some black. And this one is really all black. Like that. Now we're going to work our way up here. So there's a lot, this is where these warm tones are going to come in. So again, we're going to start with that lighter color, even though it's very dark on this side and it gets much brighter on the other side. We're going to just put in the pale yellow Then I might build into a more of a mustardy yellow. Not going all the way over because again, this time it's going to be brighter over there. I might bring in that warm tone, that kind of reddish brown to just again start building it up slowly, slowly. There's some over here too. And then I would probably finally go to the darker tone, which would be like this dark brown. And it's very, very dark on this side, and it sort of stays medium and lightens up as it moves across. So we're not going to go over the whole thing with one color. We're building it up slowly. Let's go back, add a little bit more of that red orange here, and that golden yellow, which really wants to be almost orange over here. So you can see what I did there on this one. Now we're going to go up to the top. We're going to start with some golden yellow again. It's like a dark, dark crown on top of the lighthouse. We're going to bring in some of that reddish warm tone. Again, it's the warm family this time. We're not using the cool tones, and I'm leaving that highlight uncolored, but I'm going to put just a light color in there. Now I'm going to bring in that really dark brown tone and really kind of go down on that heavy, filling in that dome. Remember, you can always stop the video where you need to and back it up if you need to see things. And I'm actually going to pull in some black. I think that brown needs to be even darker. So I'm going to pull some black in here like that. I'm going to take some of that black up here and a little on that side. I don't want to cover it too much because I definitely want to highlight in there. And there. So there you go. You got your tower. Now we're going to go down to the building below. And remember, this is taking time because we're really mindfully working each section. So we'll start with going back to our cool tone. Actually, I think I'm going to start with that pink. A little bit of pink down here. Very, very lightly. Then I'm going to pull in some of the purpley blue on top because it is somewhat of a dark shape. But again, starting small. So a little bit of purple in here. A little bit of that pale blue too, so I'm going to put that in there. And now I'm going to go in with some gray to really suggest some of the shadowiness we see there. And finally, a little bit of black to really emphasize almost like a stripiness that it has there. A little bit more pink, just to blend in. Okay, now back to some of those warm tones on the house. We're going to put a little bit of brown here, a little bit of peach here, and here. We'll just fill in that whole area with the peach tones for a moment. Then we're going to come back in with that dark brown. Really fill that shadowy side of the house. It's in shadow. There's no light hitting it there. That's why it looks so dark. Really goes to almost a black. But this, we're going to add some of that golden yellow that we used up here also over. Okay, welcome back. So we have talked about shading in the lighthouse, and now we're ready to move into the background. So if you look at the background of the original Edward Hopper picture, there's a series of contrasts going on here. You have the very, very dark, shadowy land right underneath the lighthouse. You have a bright pop of color with the golden hay here, which could be water too if you wanted to make it water instead, as I mentioned earlier, and darker shadowy areas here. Then of course you have the contrast to the beautiful blue sky. So let's start at the bottom where the deep layered contrasts are, and then we'll work our way up to the sky using, I prefer colored pencils for this. You will use what you have. but let's get started. Okay, so for the bottom of our picture, we're going to really need some dark colors. We're going to need some dark brown. We're definitely going to need some golden colors. Any of the brown range colors that you happen to have would be perfect. Black, of course, will be needed in there. I would have some grays, because again, this is all about layering colors, not feeling like you have to stay in one area, but layering the colors to get the exact effect that you want to get. So these are some colors that I will start with. Bring in a couple browns, and I know that I have a dark brown in here somewhere. I'll find it a little later. Okay, so a lot of dark tones, brown tones. We're going to be working on these dark areas and this golden golden field area. Okay, so let's focus on the bottom half of our picture. What I'm going to do is I'm going to lightly start shading in. And again, I'm all about building color, so I'm going to lightly shade in, knowing that I'll be bringing black again later, but I want to just sort of block it in for now. This is all very, very dark in this area. So I'm not putting a lot of pressure on my pencil. I'm really trying to keep it quite light so that I can keep adding color on top. Okay, so now let me take some browns, get some browns in there. Again, just slowly building up the color. You could even put a deep mossy green in here if you wanted, but the idea is to let that color be heavy as you gradually build it up. So I'm going to come over here and do that. Okay, now I'm going to move into beginning to bring some of that really dark black, which dominates the bottom portion of this picture. Like this. Really, really dominates it. And over here, it almost has this kind of reddish brown quality in there, so I'm going to bring that in there and build up more black on top, like that. Now you might even prefer to use an oil pastel for this. If you really, really wanted to get super, super dark, you could do that. Bring some of this gray-green in here, because I actually like it, and I do think that there is a little bit of this kind of green undertone in there a bit. So I'm going to put a little bit of that there. And there's actually a couple little pops of color, a little lighter right here. So I'm going to lighten that up with some white to kind of bring out that little soft effect right here where there's a little more light. And put some more yellow on there just to lighten it up there. Okay, we're going to go back over here, putting some of that dark green to really help the black really look matte and dark. And then we'll come back over, again, very heavy with the black, like this. Really putting pressure on my color pencil now. And then lightening it up. So it's like that. Okay, and I'm not going to worry if I go over that marker line. I'd probably prefer it disappear anyway, so I'm going to just do that. And probably just to really, really get the darkness here, I'm going to have to go over it a little bit more and a little bit heavier. It's all about comparison, looking at your work and then deciding, is it deep enough to match the darkness that he achieves in his work? So let's take a look. It really is dark, so that's why I'm trying to work so hard to get that. So I'm going to do the same treatment down below, but before I do that, I'm going to move over to the golden yellow hay, and that's a really nice contrast to the black. I'm gonna work on this area a bit, and then I'm gonna let you bring the same kind of darkness to these three areas that you have above. There's a little bit of golden yellow there, but not a lot. It's almost all in shadow. So I'm gonna work that. Again, blocking in the yellow lightly. And I'm doing this sort of diagonal mark because the hay looks like it's sort of blowing in the breeze here. I'm going to go over it now with a sort of a reddish brown. There's actually more color mixtures going on in here than there are in the than that blackish brown green hilltop where the lighthouse sits. Okay, so I'm actually going to maybe bring in some of this yellow orange now and really, again, start to build up the color and blend it in. And it's going to get darker again towards the bottom, but there is this kind of beautiful yellow glow to the top that I'm bringing in. Now some of that beautiful brown orange, because it does get more and more dark here. Building that up, and maybe even blending a little gray in there too, because there are some dark and maybe some of that beautiful green. That green is really great. Just lightly with the green because it's more of a gray tone, but I just love that green color. And then ultimately maybe even a little bit of black. So I'm going to come back with that golden yellow, fill up the bottom portion here. So we can really get in there and really put pressure down on our pencil now to get that golden yellow hay. Again, lightly over here, not as much, but there will be some suggestion of yellow in there. A little bit of black to bring out the sort of shadowiness near the edge. Not too much black, just a little bit. And again, darkening it up right near the edge. It's okay if I go into the next section with the brown, because guess what? That's going to be all very, very black. So if I go into the next section a little bit, I'm not worried a bit. So there's that. And if we look, you see how we're getting that darkness. In fact, we could go even a little darker here. So I'm going to bring that black in a little bit more, just a little bit, to show that darkness creeping in to the picture. And then I'm going to go back to a very dark area here. So I've just turned my paper sideways to capture, again, lightly at first. It's all about building up the colors. So lightly at first, lightly over here, and lightly over here. First, lightly, then we're going to go back and we're going to build it up much darker. Got to bring that dark over here a little bit more. Okay. And you'll notice there's a little bit of green yellow. That's where that yellow is that I put down there. So I'm going to put a little green in there. I'm going to finish filling this in with the black. And then I want you to move forward, building up the black to almost the intensity that we have up here. This is the intensity we want down here. I would stick with the blacks, some green, and some dark brown. I'm going to let you do that, and then I'm going to come back and show you this completed, and then we'll move on to the sky. Okay, welcome back. So at this point, you probably have finished the land beneath the lighthouse. So this is the area that we were focusing on a moment ago with our color pencils. Now we're going to turn our attention to the sky. Now we're going to be getting away from these beautiful earth tones, the browns, the golds, the greens. Now we're going to be looking for blues. Lots of different pale blues, sky blue, aqua blue, even a little bit of a purpley blue. And then to also offset the sky, you're going to notice there's some gorgeous pinks and peaches, and of course white for the clouds. In fact, for the white here, you may end up wanting to use something more like a oil pastel and sort of gently smearing it in after the fact of doing the sky. So we're going to be using, unlike the heavy coloring we were doing down there, we're going to be doing much more of a lighter effect above. So gather your color pencils. Maybe you want to have a white oil pastel or crayon for later. I'm going to put that aside for now, and let's get started. Okay, so once again, we are going to focus on blocking in very lightly the sky color. This is a very pale sky full of beautiful pinks and purples. We want to very lightly, using maybe the side of our pencil, we're going to lightly and gently layer the sky colors into this picture. Don't want to go too heavy, because when you're layering colors, even like when we were on the lighthouse and on the land, you want to make sure that you have room to still add some variety to the color without getting too inordinately heavy. So I'm going to just lightly put in that blue. Doesn't matter if you go over into your lighthouse a little bit. Don't worry about that. I might even go over the clouds, because I think I'm going to bring those back out later with a white oil pastel. I'm going to now start bringing in some of the beautiful purpley, very lightly, just picking up the purple tones actually from the lighthouse, but I'm barely touching the paper. I really don't want this to be heavy. I want it to be light, graceful, pretty. Bring in some pinks, and the pinks can be maybe a little bit more intense as they get up to closer to the clouds. Again, I'm going to just go ahead and go over that. The pinks are actually much heavier towards the top, but I'm going to go back and I'm going to just begin to, again, lightly bring in the blue. Lightly bringing that in layers, popping it in, using the side of my pencil to go back and forth so I can get that beautiful blue tone without overkill, without too much layering. This is really just a light foil to the darkness of the top of our lighthouse, and so we want to keep it super soft. Super soft. With, again, pale purple coming in, maybe coming up in here to the corner a bit more, coming around the lighthouse, a little more up here, some purple over here. Maybe I'll bring some of that bluish purple in now. Not gonna try to get a perfect look, because you know what? Hopper used paint. We're not using paint here. We're using color pencil, so we need to think what's going to give us the feeling of the Hopper. And this has more pink over here, I see, without actually being the Hopper technique. So we're just trying to bring in the beautiful pinks, blues, purples, and let that be the gorgeous contrast to the sky. Now, there's very little pink over here now, but there is quite a bit of this pretty blue. So I'm going to get in there again and just lightly, building up color slowly, taking my time. I almost feel like a windy day, doesn't it? With the way you take the marks across the page, it makes it feel like maybe there's wind. There's a few kind of pinkish clouds feeling like they're coming over here. So you can get a little heavier. There's a lot more pink up in this area, I'm noticing, right near the lighthouse top. So I'm gonna just get a little bit heavier with the pinks there. Maybe bring in this really pretty reddish pink just to deepen it. Not too heavy again, keeping light strokes the whole time. There's a lot more pink near the top, a lot more blues on this side than pinks. So again, I'm gonna just use that blue, get in there. It's actually darker as it gets closer to the lighthouse, but I wanna watch that I don't get into that pretty pink that I made earlier on the lighthouse, right? So just building up slowly, slowly. Now what I'm gonna do next is I'm going to get a white oil pastel so that I can show you how to bring that white oil pastel in for the cloud. So right here we have this lovely cloud, and why not just soften it? Soften it against the sky. And then what I'm gonna do is to get rid of some of that blackish outline, which I don't like. I'm just going to bring some blues and purples right up near the cloud without drawing too much attention to it. I'm just going to try to soften that black outline that I did earlier to make it a little softer, just like that. This has more purples in it anyway. I could smear it, make it a little softer. It actually brings our attention to the lighthouse more by doing that too. Brings our attention closer to the lighthouse. So do this, lighten that up, put some blue in here, again to offset some of that. And blue right up to here and blue over here. Really make that a pretty little cloud. And there you go. You pretty much have the beautiful windy skies of Hopper's Lighthouse here with the pretty pinks and blues of the picture, the original picture, and of course the deep, beautiful earth tones on the bottom. So I hope you have enjoyed creating your lighthouse drawing. I would love to see you post it on social media. You could hashtag Library Arts if you want. But thank you for joining me. This is Doris Benter from Library Arts. Have a good day.